And I remember looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, like, I can do this. It's the adrenaline, it's the rush that you just want to do more and more. And you can't beat that because you're on cloud nine then. Nobody can stop you. Now, I'm going to be very real here, and not a lot of people would like this. I think a lot of people would probably switch off from my video at this point. And we are live. We are live, people. What is going on? Welcome back to the Ricky2ra Podcast, episode 81, guys. We're doing it. We're not doing bad at all. I hope you guys are keeping well. I hope you guys are healthy. Do you know what I mean? Health is wealth at the end of the day. This is your boy Ricky2ra. We're back. And as you can see in the title, this is a topic I haven't really properly talked about in depth. That is correct. Your boy is not doing impromptu this time. Your boy's got some notes with him this time round. So, without further ado, let's just jump straight in to this topic, because I'm actually enjoy talking about stuff like this, and I've got two, what's the word I'm looking for? Two views on this, okay? I've got the positives and the negatives, okay? Because I'm a bit optimistic. I like to think about things in the future that can happen, but obviously you've got to be a realist as well, and you've got to think about the whole real life aspect of it as well. So, without further ado, is it worth doing gigs? Is it really? Now, I am talking about a magician perspective, but you can put this into whatever industry you're into. If you're a musician, performer, actor, etc. Okay? Is it worth doing gigs? Now, this is going to come from my point of view as a magician and my current situation from now. I'm going to be completely honest with you. My opinion on this 4 or 5 years ago would be completely different to what I'm talking about right now at this moment of time for you guys in this episode. I believe I have talked about this actually in a previous podcast episode dating a long time back, maybe about 2-3 years ago now. I think, I can't remember if it was called How to Get Gigs or My View or Small Gigs Are the Best, something like that. I've got to actually rewatch that episode back and see how we do, but this is my in-depth 2024 version of is it worth doing gigs, because I have a lot to say about this, so buckle in. I believe it is worth doing gigs. Okay, this is going to be my positives for it, okay? We'll get through all of this first. So, is it worth doing gigs? Yes. However, okay, this can be if you're just starting out or you're a seasoned professional that wants to continue. But I'm going to dabble into the just starting out. I believe it is worth doing gigs because you've got to put yourself into them situations in order to grow and eventually succeed. I remember my first gig, and it wasn't the wedding one that I've talked about in previous episodes. I was booked by, and I've talked about this, I was booked by a lovely gentleman called Adi. So big up Adi, if you ever watch this. I did meet him at the wedding actually, and I'm not going to get into the wedding story, but into this first gig story, which I have talked about, but I'll briefly just recap it. He booked me for his son's birthday. Shout out to Ellis as well. And it was his 16th birthday party, and I remember I didn't go, it was like a house party, kind of like family party. So I didn't really wear a suit there. I just wore kind of casual clothes, smart casual, and I did a load of card tricks there. And that was my first ever experience into that type of event, because I'd performed at a wedding before, but it wasn't a gig, it was just a family wedding. But for this to be a gig and to be a family birthday party, it was a whole different event, and I felt like it went really well and I enjoyed myself. But I remember probably about an hour before, I was sweating really bad. I was sweating like, I'm going to get into a bit in depth here, guys, so like my armpits were like sweaty. Sorry if I disgusted all of you. But yeah, and I remember looking at myself in the mirror and I was like, like, I can do this. Like, this is just like, you know, this is what I do. Do you know what I mean? And I remember getting there and I met AD, and I knew his son as well and some of his family, so it was nice just to know people that you knew. And I was just going there, I was just performing, and they treated me very well there as well. They brought me in as like one of their own family members, which is very lovely of them. And yeah, the rest is history. But it's getting yourself into them situations, and going back to, is doing gigs worth it? Yes, because you got to put yourself into them situations in order to grow. Because I did a few things wrong, but I didn't never step down, because where would I go? I got dropped off, I think, by my mum or my dad. I think my dad dropped me off, and like I couldn't just run off anywhere. Like I didn't even know the area that well back then. So it was like if something went wrong, you just had to pick yourself back up and just try again. So yeah, that was probably a very, very good situation to be in. So in order to get your first, like, performing at your first gig, you got to get stuff wrong, because it's your first gig. You're allowed to get stuff wrong. You're allowed to get stuff wrong at any gig, but especially your first, you're allowed to. And yeah, the situations that you're going to be in, you meet different people. And I've talked about this in a previous episode, like retail. Get yourself in retail, because you talk to so many people. But even if you don't go into retail and you just go straight into the gig scene, you meet so many different people anyway, and that's 100% worth it, because you might not see them people coming to like your normal like local corner shop possibly. So I've kind of delved into both of them, the retail side and the gig side, being a magician, and you meet a lot more different people, the good, the bad and the ugly. I'm going to leave it at that. However, it's a good experience to have, whether it's good, bad or ugly, because you learn from your situations. And it kind of goes into my points where you can kind of judge kind of the group before you go there. Once you get to that sort of experience where you can kind of like, you know that it's going to be a good group, or you know it's going to be a bad group, and you're going to have to do a little bit more. A story's actually popped into my head right now. I was performing at Yorkshire Entertainment Awards 2019, so nearly 5 years ago. So shout out to Anthony for booking me for that. I remember it was more of a like, do you know, like grime rap kind of scene in the awards show. So it's kind of like your grime artists, your R&Bs, your singers and stuff. I'd say the majority of stuff like that, kind of like drill and stuff like that. And I was doing magic to a table, and I believe it was of a family. It was of adults, kind of like African descent. And I went up there, and I've never seen them before, because I'd done the gig the year before previously, so I knew the majority of people, but I hadn't seen these people before. And they were speaking broken English, but the point is that the magic would translate what I was doing. And it was funny for myself, because whenever I performed the magic, they'd look like very seriously like about what happened, and I loved it, because it was something that I wasn't really expecting. Maybe I was expecting like a shock or some sort of amazement, but they were very serious. And I remember when I made a card reveal, I asked her to sign it, and she signed it eventually. I think she was a bit frank whether to sign it or not, thinking that I was going to do something. I think she drew a smiley face in the end. She probably thought I was going to do something with a signature, bless her. But yeah, she signed it, and then I made the card like reveal, and she like looked at the people on the table, and she looked really serious, and I was like, I hope you guys have a lovely evening. Like, I because I was still in like work gig mode, but I loved it, and I still remember it to this day. So big up to whoever they were, because they were awesome, man. Because I love like a different reaction, you know. I love it when people just get like, it's just one of the things that make me so happy, just different reactions. So yeah, you meet a whole different lot of people. That's what I'm talking about, and you see a different load of reactions, and it's amazing. It builds on that adrenaline. If you're a magician here and you've done a load of gigs, or you're a seasoned professional, hell, if you're even David Blaine Dynamo watching this, hello. But yeah, you'd know it's the adrenaline, it's the rush that you just want to do more and more. And you can't beat that, because you're on cloud nine then. Nobody can stop you. Linking back to my first point, you know, you do these gigs because it helps you improve as a performer as well, and you can go from your first gig into your second to your 10th, 20th, 30th, 100th, and always improve on it. You can always update your set, update your performances. So that's why it's 100% worth it, because You wouldn't just do one gig, fail, and then stop, because then there's nothing to improve on. You're not looking back at what went wrong or what you can improve on. And looking back on my set from that first gig that I did at the birthday party and looking at my set now, it's massively improved, and I still want to improve on my current set as well. So it just shows you that you're always growing. It's always going to be like, it's not going to go from like 0 to 100 real quick. It's going to go like up, down, up, down. You're going to have your good gigs, your bad gigs. I'm not just going to say like it's good and bad like in that sort of pattern, but you could have like a load of good gigs and then maybe one bad gig and then a load of, do you know what I mean? So always improving your performance, because with the more amount of gigs you do, the better you'll get and the better your performances and sets and effects will be. And the brilliant thing about doing gigs is you don't actually need to do much for social media. Now I'm talking about like if you want to do the bare minimum, and I'm going into like sort of branding kind of in this side. This is why gigs are totally worth it for your brand, because you can just get somebody to film your performances at gigs. Actually ask them if you can record, because you actually are at it could be a private event or something. But you can use your performances and put them online. It's just so easy just to document the whole thing and just cut it up into little pieces of content and just stick it on TikTok or YouTube Shorts or Instagram and get a following online. I remember I did it was New Year's Eve in Bradford in 2022 actually, so just about over a year ago, and I remember I got my sister to film me for that. She filmed a good hour's worth, and I just chopped it all up and I made like a little show reel out of the whole night, and which was really cool, and I tagged a few of the industry people in there as well. But stuff like that, you can so easily make content out of just doing gigs, and I feel like that's totally worth it, especially if you're starting out. If you're well established already and you're cutting up content from your gigs, it's just going to take you hopefully onto another level. I'm not saying it'll happen straight away, but the more you'll do it, obviously the more you'll grow. But that's one thing I miss about doing gigs, because I don't do gigs as often now, because I'm in a new period in my life where I'm doing this content here. However, I'm trying to do more magic in the shop. And if you haven't seen that, check out my Instagram. I haven't done much yet, but soon we will get onto a good system and good routine for that. But in the meantime, gigs for me at the moment isn't there, and that's the thing that I miss about creating content from gigs. And I recommend a lot of magicians out there that are starting out, even if you're very scared and you're doubting yourself for your first gig, kind of think about it from the content side. If you can get somebody like your mum, your dad, your mate, your cousin, anybody that knows how to hold a camera and record, do it for the content at least as well, because you'll be more happy at the end of the night with the content you've got and the job that you've done as well, rather than just going there and just kind of getting a bit nervous about yourself doing the magic. And yeah, adding on to that point, word of mouth spreads. The more gigs you perform at, the more people you'll meet, and you might get repeated clientele. And I know I saved this to a little point in my notebook, but you kind of turn yourself into like a little small business. You got like your regular clients that you're doing. Like I talked about AD. I've done a load of events for AD, from the birthday party to other family events that he's booked me for as well. So I really appreciate that, AD. And that is just word of mouth. You kind of get from one person, the word spreads to this. And next thing you know, you do an event here, an event there, and next thing you know, you're kind of going up and down the country perhaps. It's beautiful. It's such a wonderful thing. And I love stuff like that as well, because it just shows that there are kind people out there that, even if you didn't do social media, you'd still get clientele, and you could still earn a little side income as well, even if it's not your main job, or you don't want it ever to be your main job. It's always a little side cash here and there as well. So that's a beautiful thing about it, and I believe other people in other industries can agree with that on me, whether you're a musician, actor, etc. as well. I'm sure you kind of like that as a passion or maybe a hobby as well. And even those seasoned professionals in any industry, especially you magicians, you just, even word of mouth right now, there'd be probably so many people wanting to book you. You have to decline them at some point as well. But yeah, you get booked for different events, and I believe this one's very key, because gigs are totally worth doing it, because you get booked for different events and you can kind of see which gigs you like the most and which gigs you don't like the most, and what your style kind of attracts and what your style doesn't attract. I remember when I was starting out, I did everything. So I did close-up magic at weddings, I did anniversaries, birthday parties, I did a kids show, I did a private show in a house, entertaining. I did, what else did I do? Stage shows at a little festival. I've done it restaurant. I've done restaurant magic as well. I've done Zoom magic as well. If I can think of anything, I've done business launches. You know what I mean? So yeah. And from them, I kind of niche myself down. So I mainly do weddings. In the past few years, I have done weddings now. So that's the event that I like the most, and I feel like I'm more suited to as my brand and my niche from back then. So yeah, the more you do, the more you'll know, and the more you'll know what events kind of you attract and what you want to do more, and you'll know where more of your bookings are coming from as well. If your bookings are coming from somewhere where you don't enjoy it, I'd probably recommend that you pass that on to somebody else, because you will get probably burnt out and bored, maybe frustrated with yourself over time. So I highly recommend that you get into the event that you want to as well, because at the end of the day, it's not about money, it's about doing, I don't want to say doing what you love, I'm trying to stay away from that, but it's hard when it's a passion as well. You're meant to do what's right, but what's right for you as well. You don't want to do something that's different for your brand, that's kind of out of context unless it makes sense. Yeah, like I said, you can build a small businesses from doing gigs, a nice little side cash, or if you want to turn it full time, you kind of do gigs all over. If you're getting booked maybe every other weekend and then eventually every weekend all year round, you're doing great, and it's a nice little small business. You got your clients there, you keep them happy, you're happy, jobs are good. And the brilliant thing about doing gigs is you get to travel. I'm not saying that you'll go international straight away, but the more gigs you do, you never know, you might have that opportunity where you get a repeat client going, Ricky, I'm in Dubai, I want to book you for something in Dubai. I'm going to be honest with you, I've never got anything like that myself, but you could possibly, or for the people that are watching, you probably have. So yeah, you don't ever think that you're just stuck to one place or one country, because the world is your oyster. I've written one more thing down, and I don't know actually what I've written here. More social. So you get more social. You meet a lot of different people, you meet your clients, maybe some of your clients are your mates, so at the end of the day, you maybe built a good relationship, you can have a good old laugh with them. It makes you more social. So from my first gig to where I am now, I'm a lot more social, meaning I can talk to a lot more people and I don't find it difficult on what to say, even if I don't have to do magic, because I've done it so many times now, gigs. This is not even doing the shop. I can literally I can get booked tomorrow for a gig and have a good old chat with a load of people that I'd never met in my life, because I've done it so many times. I know the system that I work through, and yeah, I just know it because I've done it for so many times. I've actually, fun fact here, May this year in 2024 marks 10 years of me doing gigs, and the only gig I didn't do was in 2020, so maybe it could be 9, but I'm going to say 10. So yeah, I've got 10 years nearly worth of experience under my belt, so I pat myself on the back for that. But it's kind of one of them where the more you do, the more you'll know. Now we've talked about the benefits for stuff like that, I'm going to talk about the disadvantages, the negatives. Forget that word negative. The disadvantages, because you've got to be optimistic, but you've got to be realistic as well. You've got to know Are you in this for the long term? You can start off doing it, but eventually what you'll realise is the more you do it, the more you'll start to realise, is this for me? Now, I'm going to be very real here, and not a lot of people would like this. I think a lot of people would probably switch off from my video at this point. So if you don't want to hear, my opinions on the disadvantages of doing gigs, then just click off now, just have a good old time. If you're still here, then fair enough, we're going to go straight into it. Is it worth doing gigs? Maybe if you start off, yes, but if you're not in it for the long term, then no, it's not worth doing gigs in the long term. I'm not saying don't start at all. I'm saying in the long term, it's not. Because it gets repetitive. Now, this is for somebody that doesn't want to do it long term, that kind of saw themselves doing it perhaps as a career in future, and you've realised the older you get, the more you don't actually want to be booked out on a weekend and do it. Now, this isn't somebody falling out of love with magic, and this isn't somebody that isn't doing it for just the money. This is just my thoughts on this that I've put together that I think could be disadvantages of doing gigs in the long term. It could be repetitive. Maybe you're doing the same function hall every other weekend. You're doing the same tricks. You're upgrading your tricks, but you know the same reactions, you know the same effects that you're doing, and it kind of gets repetitive and boring. It's lovely for the spectators that you're doing it for, but it's just not working for you. You're not getting that adrenaline, that dopamine hit that you normally get from your first or your 10th gig. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm talking about? And this is where it separates people from the top of the game to people that kind of want to hit that, but they don't. So it might bore you, and I've got to be real. I've got to be very real here. You might not even get gigs. You might just get booked for like maybe your first 5, and then you're not doing enough work to actually chase the gigs and actually get them yourself. Because I'm not saying everything comes to you. You've got to do the work as well. That's what business is all about. You've got to go out there. You've got to contact your clients. You've got to get the bookings. You've got to contact halls, venues, people that are in events. You've got to do all of that. And if you don't do all of that and you're just waiting for people to contact you, then it's not ever going to work out for you. Because you might get your 5 clients that book you, but they're not going to book you every weekend, are they? They might book you maybe once a year, twice a year. Hell, if you're even lucky, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a year. But it's not going to work out if you're not putting the work in for it. So if you know that you're not in it for the long term, that you don't want to chase the clients, that you don't want to do it, but you want to perform anyway, then I'd say don't do the gigs. Maybe if you just want the odd one that your client books you for, fair enough, do it. But if you don't want to do it long term, and you don't want to do all that business side of it, where you're travelling up and down, maybe you're missing a few nights with your family, your girlfriend, your wife, your missus, your kids, and you feel like it's not worth it in the end, I highly recommend you don't do it. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but I've just got to say it from this side as well. And a lot of things I've been seeing, especially in this digital world we're living in, TikTok, I've got to be real here. I hear a lot of influencers saying, get rich, chase the money, do this, do that. And you know what? Some of it's right and some of it's just out of context. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I don't believe you should chase money. I believe you should chase problems, and then you should find solution for them problems. Now, I'm not an influencer. I don't do any of that motivational kind of stuff for TikTok. But I'm just going to leave it at that. If you don't understand that quote, just replay this episode again, or what I just said, because I'm going to leave that there. But what I'm trying to say is, if you don't want to work, because gigs is basically trading your time for money if you're putting it in for business. And if you don't want to trade your time in for money, then don't do it. Do something else. I understand at the start of everything you've got to trade time in for money, but if you're good at something else and gigs isn't the number one thing on your priority list anymore, maybe you could do something else. Maybe you could film on the street, put it on YouTube, and you make your income through there, and that isn't time for money anymore. Now, this is me getting into a whole different other topic, but I just want to keep it very brief there. If you don't want to physically go into an event hall, entertain a load of people, and then come all the way home 3-4 hours after, and then be tired, then don't do it. Now, this is for long term, remember. This isn't for people starting out. For people starting out, watch the first half of this episode, what I just said. But yeah, if you don't want to do that in the long term, then do something else. But remember, you're always got to trade your time in for money in order for money to work for you. And if you don't feel like that is... Because at the end of the day, you're a performer. And if you don't feel like that's what you want to do, then you don't have to do that. That's just one side. Gigs is just one side of doing it. There's a completely other side. Maybe I'll get into a future episode, YouTube, other sources that you can do with magic. But yeah, if you don't want to do it long term, don't do it. You know, if you're one of them people where it's kind of your 50-50, I feel like you know where your heart really is. If you're getting a bit scared for that client calling and you're like, oh my God, he's calling me again, I don't want to do it. Do I need to say any more? Now, this is going to be something else. I've talked about stuff that maybe you don't want to do it long term. I'm going to talk about other stuff as well. Now, before I get into that, this isn't me being negative, guys. This is me just talking about the harsh reality about things as well. So I'm not negative on gigs. I actually love gigs as well. But I've got to talk about this side as well from my experience. And I don't want you to think I'm just shitting on magicians and shitting on gigs, because I'm not. Okay, I love magicians. I love gigs. And this next one is probably something that a lot of people have gone through in their gig life. But it's a harsh reality if you do want to do it, and if you feel like it's not worth it anymore, is people don't want to pay much for you. People don't want to pay much for performance. A lot of people be like, oh, it's great exposure, great this and that, but it's like, bitch, I gotta make a living. Do you know what I mean? Sorry for my French there, guys, but it's one of them where it's like, you know, if you're doing it for your business, you've got to charge what you feel like you're worth, and you'll know that when people don't want to pay that no more. But you just know people are being a bit weird if it's like, well, we kind of want to pay you £50 for this and that, or maybe we want to, you know, get you the exposure, get you socials and stuff like that. It's like, no, I'm a business. And that's something that took me a very long time to learn in this industry. And you shouldn't let people push you around, and you've got to know what you're worth as well. But I'm not saying that, say, like you're worth $5,000 and you're getting no bookings whatever, because then you know it's stupid. Like, I'm not talking about that level of stupidity, but I'm talking about know your worth as well. Find your price, and if you feel like you're not getting paid enough, or people aren't paying you, perhaps that could be one aspect, or it could be another aspect is you're just absolute shite. But that's for you to find out. Now, I'm not saying you're crap, whoever's watching. I'm just telling you the harsh realities and the options there for is doing gigs worth it. And the final thing before I leave you beautiful people is you have to be well established to succeed. So if you want to go into this game of gigs, you've got to be in and out. You've got to be a veteran in the game. You've got to build up your socials these days, and you've got to become some sort of well-established magician in order perhaps to raise your price and get more gigs and be out there performing. Now, there's a lot of people these days, you don't even need to do your first gig. You can literally perform on camera and you can blow up on TikTok overnight. And the next thing you know, you got a load of people booking you anyway. But I want to stick to the reality to this, is possibly you haven't built your brand enough, or you're not pushing yourself enough, or you just not got it in you, that nobody's booking you. That's just it. Wow. This has been a very good episode. I've enjoyed this, guys. I've enjoyed this. I don't know what else to say, but thank you to everybody for tuning in to this episode. I have made some good notes for this, and as you can see, that was not impromptu. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I could possibly make a part 2 on this. I feel like maybe I have more to say, but I just can't think of anything at this moment in time. But if you stuck around for this long, thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, rate this if you listen on podcast platforms as well. I just want to do one more thing before I leave this episode. And I've got to give a shout out to this very, very, and I mean very good friend. Like, is the G, is one of the G's, alright? Is the man dem, you know, the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Samraz. Samraz, for those that don't know, Samraz a day one magician friend of mine. I met him at Bradford Magic Circle. If you guys are familiar with him, you've probably seen my Blackpool Magic vlog. If you are not familiar with him, watch my Blackpool Magic Convention blog, or vlog even. It'll be there. It'll be just do my channel to popular to least popular. It'll be like in the top 10, whatever. But yeah, shout outs to you, Samraz. You left a comment. You didn't even know that your boy started doing the podcast, and yeah, your boy started doing the podcast again, bro. So you get a lot of catching up to do. I really appreciate your comment, bro. It's a lot of love. You know, when you got a lot of good people around you, they just stumble upon stuff. And Sam, you stumbled upon me again on the internet, so I really appreciate that, mate. And I hope to see you soon, brother. Please check out Sam as well. I'll put a link to his socials at the bottom, man. You know, feel free to give him a follow as well. He's one of the mandem, you know what I mean. And yeah, blessings to you and the family, Sam. Right, guys, this has been your boy Ricky2ra. I'm going to clock out for today. I'll see you all next week. Peace, stay strong, and remember always, follow your dreams.